Okay, I make that 6 o'clock, so we will start this meeting. So welcome to the meeting of Bursledon, Hamble and Hound Local Area Committee. I'm Tonya Craig, I'm chair of this committee. Sorry, Tim. I'm Tonya Craig, I'm chair of this committee and I represent Bursledon. Opposite me, furthest from the screen, is Becky Wiseman, who's our assistant local area manager, Cllr O'Sullivan and Steve Holes, councillors that represent Bursledon. This side nearest the screen we have David Hupfield, senior planner, Claire Campbell-Best, I always get that wrong, the planning officer. To my left we have Ross McLean, who's local area manager, Catherine Collins from Democratic Services and Abida from Legal Specialists. Okay, I have to read this out, I've been told. Councillors are reminded that to take part in this meeting, you must have an open mind so that you can take all the relevant considerations presented to the meeting into account and reach your decision. By attending today, you have decided that you will listen to all the points of view expressed by the speakers and public and are able to participate and cannot be seen to have a predetermined application. Right, I don't need to read the rest. Okay, so apologies. Catherine?
We have apologies from Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Cross and Councillor Holland.
Thank you very much. Public participation, are either of you for anything other than what's on the agenda? No? Okay, brilliant, thank you very much. Declaration of interest, Jane.
I need to declare a personal interest in item number 8 on the agenda, Chair. I live on Lowford Hill. I'm not adjacent to Netley Green Cottage, and I don't know the applicant personally, so feel I'm still able to take part in the debate and the vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, that's noted. Minutes of previous meeting. Anybody have any questions, concerns on those? Steve? Okay, thank you very much. Jane, second him. Were there any outstanding? Nothing. Okay. So it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of accepting? So it's all three of us. Thank you. We are very light this evening. We normally have 6 councillors, but 2 are unfortunately having to have hospital treatment and one's on holiday. So we're just about quorum. Okay, Chair's announcements. There were only 2 things that I wanted to mention, so that they're actually on record. One is the loss of the post box in Lowford, which we weren't consulted on. That just disappeared overnight. And I know that Becky has been doing a lot of work with trying to get Royal Mail to replace it, but at the moment we're not getting much joy because they seem to think that we have enough in and around the area. They're not taking into consideration those that come to the village to do all their business at once, that are sort of finding it a bit difficult. So I just wanted to put that on record, and just to remind people that Hampshire County Council are out to consultation at the moment on their services. As we know, they have a massive deficit which they're having to pull their budgets. So it's just to remind you to go online and put your pieces across as to what you don't want to lose. I think for many it's all of it, but we will see. Okay, that's it from me. Report to the local area manager. Any updates, Ross?
Thank you, Chair. Yep, very loud. Yeah, just 3 recommendations from my report, quite light tonight. One is the approval of the allocations for a bin on 14 Gatcombe, Netley. The second one was a grant of £1,861 to the Pylons Wood Community Association to partially fund the new kitchen that's being installed using other grant external funds as well. And then finally, just to note the good news achievements in the local area the last couple of weeks and months, notably the pantry being open here. That's had some really good numbers since inception. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ross. Members, any comments you want to make on it? Steve?
Thank you, Chair. I'm seeing the pantry tonight and I think it's a great addition. When we use words to describe something like this as being great, we need to qualify it because it's not great that people need it. It's not great, it's not good, it's awful that our residents need support and need help, and we try our best to provide that in any way we can, and this is one example. We know that food banks, for instance, have been cropping up all over the country for a number of years now, and it's not good that we need them, but thankfully a lot of work has been done and they're being supported by local supermarkets, etc. And we certainly support them, and I think it's wonderful, so that's great news. And yes, the other thing's fine.
Steve, Jane?
Just to really echo what Steve said, and I've heard from people who are using the food bank or the pantry, and they are just so grateful for it, and it's really fulfilling a need in the area. But, which we shouldn't have, but we do, so it's much appreciated. And well done to all those people who've worked so hard on it as well.
It's really worth echoing that it is brilliant. It's all run by volunteers. We're helped and supported by local supermarkets to put the goods in there. But it's interesting, the people using it, because it's not just people on benefits, it's people on low incomes as well, and it is making a real difference to them. I also want to sort of say thank you to Itchen North Scouts. I think it's really good when we give a grant for something and we actually get a picture back. It's just really nice that they are grateful and do actually thank us for that. So do we have a proposer to accept this? And I'll second it just for a change. Okay, all in favour? That's everybody accepting that. Thank you very much, Ross. Reply to Pylons Wood, our thanks to the service for the pantry here as well, because it is such a need, and like Steve says, we shouldn't have it, but they are doing a wonderful job keeping it in stock and getting those volunteers to help when people need to come in. So, okay, we're going straight on to presentation of planning guidelines. Is that you, Claire? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. This is a short presentation on planning guidelines and how applications should be determined at committee. Firstly, it must be understood how proposals are determined. Planning proposals must be considered on planning grounds, and the committee must determine proposals that are in line with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The development plan used is the Eastleigh Borough Local Plan, which was adopted in April 2022, and the Hampshire Minerals Waste Plan, if relevant. There are also relevant considerations that should be taken into account during the decision-making process. This includes supplementary planning documents relating to matters such as quality places, residential parking standards and planning obligations. Any relevant planning government policy, including the National Planning Policy Framework and its presumption in favour of sustainable development. And the National Planning Policy Framework is a material consideration of significant weight that takes precedence over development plan policies which do not accord with the NPPF. So the NPPF was amended, and the key planning requirements are as follows: deliver sustainable development without delay, meet housing needs and significantly boost delivering of housing, promote growth of the economy, require high standard of design, prevent or mitigate impacts. The requirement also includes a presumption in favour of sustainable development unless adverse impacts outweigh the benefits. There are 3 threads of sustainability: economic, social and environmental. These are interdependent and needs to be pursued mutually supportive ways. There are also other material considerations to take into account when determining an application, and these include any relevant planning history or decisions, appeal decisions, site-specific matters such as highway matters, residential amenity, visual amenity, ecology, drainage and trees, as well as consultee and third-party comments and any precedent or current case law. There are also non-planning issues that cannot be considered when determining an application. These include any moral, racial or religious views, devaluation of property, loss of private view, breach of covenant, matters covered by other laws or legislation such as building regulations, alcohol licence, environment permits and care uses, personal views about the character of the applicants, or any civil matters such as boundary disputes. So with regards to the decision-making, decisions made contrary to the recommendation must be explained and minuted with clear reasons given for either an approval or refusal. If the option is to defer, to seek amendments or further information, the committee must indicate what these are. If the committee would like to add further controls on use, then details will be required and should be reasonable in planning terms. Thank you. That concludes the presentation on planning guidelines.
Thank you very much, Claire. We've only got the one application this evening, which is Netley Green Cottage, and that's you again when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So agenda item 8 is to consider the erection of an outbuilding comprising of a garage, workshop and home office located in the rear garden at Netley Green Cottage in Lowford Hill, Bursledon. So before the main presentation begins, there are some updates to share. The first being amended plans which have been provided, and these show section plans with more accurate ground levels and the soakaways to the proposed outbuilding repositioned to the front. And the second update is that the committee report states the cladding to the outbuilding will be green, but this is yet to be agreed, and a condition has been applied where the applicant must submit final details of the external materials, and these will be approved by the local planning authority. Moving on to the presentation. So Netley Green Cottage is located on the southern side of Lowford Hill, a cul-de-sac accessed from Portsmouth Road. The southern side of Lowford Hill is characterised by Edwardian dwellings with long gardens, some of which have sheds and outbuildings. So shown on the screen is the proposed site layout plan. There are some site constraints as shown by the purple dashed lines in the first plan, and these represent public sewers which are located to the east and south of the plot. The second plan is provided by Southern Water and further clarifies the location of these sewers. Due to these constraints, the proposed outbuilding would be sited in the middle of the garden, and it would be 8 metres from the main property and set in 1 metre from the boundary to the west, shared with Cllr Cottage. The site also has sloping ground levels and inclines slightly from the rear of the property and from east to west. The site also has planning history. An application for an identical proposal was submitted in December 2023. The height of the outbuilding was 2.7 metres and close to permitted development dimensions. Due to this, it was negotiated with the agent to reduce the height to 2.5 metres to fall within permitted development, and the application was withdrawn. The applicant has since reconsidered the height of the proposed outbuilding due to the desire to install a more secure garage door, which requires an increase in height to the structure. So here are the proposed elevations for the most recent scheme. The length and width of the outbuilding would remain the same when compared to the withdrawn application, but the height would be increased to 3 metres to accommodate for the roller shutter garage door. While the outbuilding is considered a large structure, aside from its height, an outbuilding with a similar size footprint could be constructed without the need for formal planning consent, which is a material consideration in the assessment of this application. The plans also show there are sloping ground levels to the outbuilding, which will be partially sunk into the ground at the rear and to the west. The front of the outbuilding would face the rear of the house, and it would have a garage door, and this would allow for easy vehicular access between the outbuilding and the driveway to the front of the site. The side elevation facing east would have 2 doors and 3 windows, and the rear elevation facing south would have 1 window. The proposal would have a flat roof and would be finished in horizontal cladding. The final colour will be determined via condition, along with the garage door, entrance door, and windows. So shown on the screen are some 3D images, which gives an impression on how the proposed outbuilding would appear with the sloping ground levels and how it would be partially sunk at the rear and to the west to reduce any perceived overbearing. And the section plans show the technical layout details of the proposal, where the differing ground levels can be seen, as well as its positioning into the ground. So here is the proposed floor plan for the outbuilding. So to the front would be the garage and workshop, and to the rear would be the home office, which would be used by the occupants of the property as they work from home. The garage and office would also be internally linked. So in order to ensure all the elements of the outbuilding would remain ancillary to the main house, as it is a sizable structure, a condition would be applied to restrict its use so it would be ancillary and not subdivided or used as a separate unit of accommodation as requested by the parish council. So moving on to the visual impact. So the photos on the screen show the outbuilding wouldn't be visible when standing directly in front of the house, as it would be screened by the existing boundary treatment, which is a mixture of fencing and hedging. And these photos show how the outbuilding wouldn't be visible when looking west towards Lowford Hill. Again, it would be mainly screened by the surrounding boundary treatment. So the top two pictures show views of Lowford Hill looking east, and the surrounding properties would screen the proposed outbuilding. And the bottom pictures show outbuildings that are already visible within the locality. The first picture is a garage on Lowford Hill, and the second is an outbuilding on Ravenscroft Close. So turning to residential amenity, the top photos show the proposed location of the outbuilding and the relationship between Laurel Cottage and the rear neighbours, numbers 13 and 14 Ravenscroft Close. So the dense hedging along the rear boundary would screen the outbuilding from numbers 13 and 14. And the bottom photo shows the land sloping from east to west towards Laurel Cottage. And this is where the outbuilding would be located and partially sunk into the ground. And the hedge along the boundary, shown in the photos, would be replaced with a 2-metre high fence should planning permission be granted. So turning to the other neighbour, the Gables, the first photo shows the proposed views from the windows to the eastern elevation of the outbuilding, and this would face that neighbour, but these views would be screened by the hedge in place, and that would be set to remain in place as well. The next two photos show the relationship between the site and the Gables and how the proposed outbuilding would be distanced away from the boundary and the neighbouring property as well. So these photos show the neighbouring garden, Laurel Cottage, and this is the neighbour most impacted as a result of the proposal. So the garden to Netley Green Cottage is to the left of the hedge in the top two photos. The outbuilding would be set in 1 metre from this boundary, and as noted, it would be sunk down and there would be a 2-metre high fence along the boundary. So Laurel Cottage is also on higher ground levels, therefore it is considered with the siting and the positioning of the outbuilding, along with the proposed boundary fencing, any perceived overbearing would be reduced with regards to this neighbour. Again, focusing on Laurel Cottage, the top two photos show the main garden space to Laurel Cottage, which is currently under renovation. But when finished, the main garden area will be the space seen on the top photo. And that proposed outbuilding is located away from this space and therefore would not impact the light received to this area. It is also noted the visit to Laurel Cottage that there's a large outbuilding sited in the rear of the garden itself, which is a considerable height and established part of the visual amenity in the surrounding area. Overall, it is considered the proposed outbuilding would not harmfully impact upon the amenities of this neighbour, and the occupants of Laurel Cottage have also sent in a letter of support for the application. So in summary, the following has been considered and deemed acceptable as detailed in the report. While sizeable, the size of the proposed outbuilding is appropriate in the context of the size of the plot. There is no unacceptable impact upon the neighbours. The use of the outbuilding would be restricted and public sewers would not be impacted upon with a condition applied to ensure they remain protected. Therefore, the recommendation is to permit subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claire. We've got one person in support. Is it Mr. Windsor? Yes, if you'd like to come up to the front, please. It's just, I wanted to make sure I got that right. It was the way it's spelt was slightly different than normal.
Windsor, Windsor, however you want to say it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Windsor, and I'm a Chartered Architectural Technologist. I'm here this evening in support of the application, and I'll try to explain the requirements of such a building and the steps that we've taken to minimise its impact and ensure there are no objections. I have to say that the case officer's report and that presentation covers everything in much greater detail that I could possibly achieve in 3 minutes. But I've got 4 key points that I'd like to, so hopefully everybody's read that report. 4 key points that I'd like to just raise and point out. So the first one is the building usage. The applicant has a 1969 American Camaro car, which is owned for 30 years, and which he takes to various classic car events. The car is 5 metres long and nearly 2 metres wide. He also owns 7 specialist motorcycles which are used for competitions. Therefore, a safe and secure building is required to store and maintain these considerably valuable vehicles. Additionally, the applicant will be using the office for working from home solely in connection with his self-employment. The second point was building design. The building will have a flat roof to minimise the overall height, as you can see on the elevations. For security reasons, roller shutter doors will be fitted, and these require a slightly higher internal headroom to accommodate the mechanism, around about 2.5 metres. If you include the construction and the roof, you're up to 3 metres minimum. So that's why we like to take the roof up to 3 metres. The exterior of the building is to be clad in a product called hardy plank weatherboarding, and we've agreed with the case officer that it will be a heathered moss. We've got samples of that. And the external doors and windows will be in a mid-grey colour, still the exact colour still to be determined, UPVC windows. The next point is the building location. On the site, the location of the building is severely restricted by a public sewer which runs down one side of the garden and across the bottom of the garden. We've been in touch with Southern Water, they've been consulted, and a GPS survey is underway to locate the exact position of that pipe and also the depth of it. The building itself will be constructed a metre from the west boundary, which I believe is Laurel Cottage, which allows for clear maintenance, access for maintenance. So the final point is neighbours' support. So the neighbours on both sides are in support of the application and have both posted positive comments on the planning website. An agreement has also been agreed between the applicant and the owner of Laurel Cottage to replace the existing hedge with a 2-metre high garden fence at the applicant's cost. So in conclusion, I hope this has provided a better understanding of the key issues and hopefully leading to a positive outcome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
And I
Mr.
did all
Windsor.
that, and I didn't even get a yellow light, an amber light.
It went on and went off. I reset it.
Oh, marvellous.
I
was
realised
kind
that
of
you were
watching it, I didn't
realised
see
that
the
you were
amber
coming
light
to an end, so I thought I'd just reset it so we wouldn't disturb you at the end. About 30 seconds. Yeah. So we're quite laid back. Yeah. If there were lots of people, I would have been saying something, but you know. Okay, but thank you very much. Member Steve.
Yeah, first of all, can I say I chaired the last meeting because Councillor Craig wasn't available, and we had, I think it was 4 or 5 applications, and there were a room full of people, and we had a lot of red lights. So it happens. Okay. First of all, you know, you sitting in the audience when you've got a planning application in, it must be quite stressful. You think, oh, what's going to happen? Why is it being called in? What does that mean? And all of that. I think with this application, when it came before parish, they're a consultee, and while they didn't raise an objection, there were a few concerns and a few questions that they had from the plans that they could see. So I listed them. They were concerned about the size in relationship to the main building, because these 2 cottages are quite small, aren't they? They're quite narrow. And in black and white, it looks quite a large footprint. So members sort of said, well, it'd be interesting to see how that goes, but it wasn't enough to object. Was there going to be overlooking? Well, clearly the roof has come down a bit, although you now put it up a little bit and explain why you need that. So there's no overlooking issue. You can see from the photographs it's not going to impact on neighbours. The location they were interested in, because they said, why has it got to be in that place? Now, we didn't have the answers at parish. We've since had the answers and explained about the pipes underneath the ground, and where we know from our own experience you can't build on top of some of these pipes, or it costs a lot of money to do so. So that sort of explains that. The office use is something that always concerns us. You know, people these days want to work from home. Ever since COVID, more and more people are working from home, at least for part of the week. And the explanation, obviously in this case is that it's wanted for an office for a son, which is fine. The main thing about this is, does it impact traffic-wise or on the neighbours? And I think in both these cases it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not going to create more traffic. If it was a nail salon or something that was going to have visitors, then we would be saying, hang on a minute, you know, there's a turning circle at the top. How's that going to affect local residents? So it clears that. And there's plenty of amenity space. It's a large garden. Yeah. And although it's a large building, it's split into three, and the garden can take it. If we refused it and it went to appeal, the first thing the inspector would say was, well, there's plenty of room in the garden. They've still got their amenity space, you know? So I'm going to recommend approval. And in particularly, I want to refer in the end to the conditions, because they're really important. We don't like subdivision, generally, of property. We try to avoid it. So we put conditions in, but there's no subdivision. It has to be ancillary use and all those things. So yeah, I'm quite happy to approve it. And, you know, it's a shame that it actually came to committee, but I think there were a number of concerns at the time that people felt they needed answers to. So that's why it ended up here rather than officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Steve. Jane?
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to repeat everything Steve said, obviously. I think he's pretty much covered it. But from my point of view, it's well screened from the road because of hedging and the wooden gate, which was put in by, I think, the previous occupants. Not the hedging, but the wooden gate. Lowford Hill, obviously, as you know, slopes in both directions. So that, obviously, it gives the impression that it's going to sort of sink down a bit. So it's not going to have that overbearing nature. It's got the support of neighbours. Laurel Cottage has an outbuilding, obviously, at the end. Previous occupant was a motorbike enthusiast as well, Seamus Spoon. Yeah. But I would really have no problem with it. The one major problem I would have had is, as Steve said, if it was bringing lots of traffic in, if you were operating something that people needed to come and see you about. Obviously, that's not the case, because, as I'm sure you know by now, parking is a problem on Lowford Hill. It can be.
Especially the dentist.
Yes. So, yes, I'm happy to second Steve's proposal.
Okay, brilliant. I'm not going to repeat all those. All I'm going to say is the concerns we had, there are conditions on there to counteract those. So it's really not an issue with that way. So it's been proposed and seconded to permit all those in favour. That's everybody. So that has been permitted with those conditions on there. Thank you very much. Okay, so just to finish the meeting, please feel free to go if you want to. We're nearly finished, but just to finish the meeting, we've got the planning appeals to note. We've got the deck house that's been lodged and one rope walk that's been dismissed. So that's very, very good news. Yeah, very good news. So thanks to officers that put the time in for that as well. Thank you. So, yeah, very good report. So that's it for now. We have an election between now and then. Good luck. Now in the next meeting. Yeah, but date of the next meeting is the 27th of June. So thank you very much, everybody.